what sort of automated administrative processes are possible using the Mendix Low-Code platform?
Right, so this one is also a pretty common thing you'll run into in any application that manages stored data. So if you have a database hooked up to your application and you're writing and reading to data, you're going to need some way for an admin to come in and be able to directly access that data or make wide sweeping changes all in one go. So the standard example of this is, say I have a table and my application has already existed for a few months. There's however many records in that table, 1,000, 100, tens of thousands, and I need to add a new column to that table that needs to be pre-filled by the time users come back into it. When you create a new column and add attributes to it, it's going to be blank because it didn't exist before. So one of the things an admin might need to do is come in and click a button that automatically pre-fills all that data for you before users come into the system. So that's the most common one. Other things are we might need to change the nature of an attribute from one thing to another. So a common one is it was a string before. A string is just when you freeform type in characters. Now it's an enumeration which has preset values. If you change it to an enum from a string, you lose the data that was in there before. So sometimes we need a process that an admin can trigger that transforms or translates that data to the new version. So Mendix has a few ways you can do this. There's scheduled events. So if you automatically want the system to handle it as soon as it wakes back up, so after a deployment, it can trigger it as soon as it's thinking, essentially. You can create an after startup event that will do this. You can put it into the after startup event. Mendix has after startups and before shutdown, I believe that's what it's called. We don't use that one all that much. I haven't used it much in my experience. After startup's the one we normally do. So after startup is if you bring the system down for any reason, when it comes back up, it's going to try to do everything that you put into that after startup logic. You can also do a general scheduled event. So if you have something that needs to go out like every night, every Monday night, once a month, once a year, you can handle that from our deployment vector, the Sprinter portal, where you can even shut it off and down, like shut it on and off from there too. So you can create a scheduled event that goes out at 11 p.m. And then if you're sitting there, as soon as you see it's done, you can actually tell it to turn off and not run that scheduled event anymore. So it might be something where you create an event and it's something you kind of do every month, something you maybe don't do every month. So you can create the scheduled event, leave it off, and then as soon as you need it, turn it on, make sure it goes, and then turn it off right there. Other things too, we have environment variables, of course, that can be managed from Sprinter. So sometimes you have scheduled events or processes that are set to go after a certain time. You can build an environment variable that's just true or false, and what you can build it so that it checks that environment variable, decides whether or not it continues or stops based on what you tell it. So if it's looking for a true or a false, it'll continue when it sees true, and it'll just make sure it doesn't do what it would have done otherwise. If it's false, you can handle that also from Sprinter. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can do this depending on what's best for you and your environment and the project that you're working on.